when you guys are shading, make sure you're going back and constantly adjusting the darkness to match your sphere and your value scale. So I keep going back and making things darker, because remember, it's always easier to go darker than it is to go lighter. So you can see I started really light and I'm slowly making this darker. And I'm doing it in the continuous circular shading motion, so things blend really well and look real smooth. The darkest section on my sphere is probably the shadow, and right here, so I could call this a 7 right here. That's going to be like my darkest, so I'm going to get really dark right here. And lighten up. We want a real smooth transition. It's probably like a 6 in here, so I need to get a little bit darker. It's all about layering, right? Slowly adding layers, changing your pressure. We don't want to smudge with our finger. We want to try to do straight blending with just the pencil. This needs to be a little bit darker over here. I'm going to darken up this section as well. This is around a 4 into a 3. All right, now I'm going to kind of draw out the lines of where my shadow is going to go. I'm going to use my lighter pencil here, just so I kind of have an idea of where I want it to go. And then I'm going to use my darker pencil, but I'm going to start nice and light and go darker. This is the darkest section in my drawing, so it's going to be a 7 closest to the edge of the ball. So I'm going to build my value right up to the edge there. And you'll notice there's a little highlight on the ball down here, and you'll see it will really kind of pop out once I kind of build up my darker value down here. So I would say it's probably a 7 really close to the edge here, and then it goes into a 6. So I want to build up some of that value. So I'm going to first get some layers in here. Okay, so now I'm going to make that darker underneath the ball. This is like layer number 2 and 3. Still not quite dark enough yet, so I'm going to build that up again, do another layer. Change my pressure a little bit, push a little bit harder. little bit softer out here, so we're at a 6 rather than a full on 7. And I'm going to go through and just do maybe a couple more layers just to really strengthen this drawing and make everything really dark. I do want to make this highlight a little less bright, so I'm going to go in and do that. That transition was bugging me there. Kind of blend that a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm going to make this a little bit darker. We want to kind of just make everything pop a little bit more. Get the full darkness of the pencil. We want the full value level number 7 and then into 6. So I'm going to darken this up a little bit more too. All right. Okay, now I'm going to work on the tabletop that the sphere is sitting on. On the top here, I'm going to do a real nice light, kind of like a 2 into about a 3 max. Okay. Sorry, that was my dog. All right, so oops, I'm going to start with my lighter pencil up here. And instead of stopping at the edge of the sphere, shade all the way to the edge. Barley. Silly guy. So notice I don't have a hard edged outline around the ball because I use value up to the edge of it. This edge is going to disappear once I put in the background, you'll see. But we don't want this cartoony look. We want it to look like a realistic 3D ball. That shows value. And then I'm going to go back in and kind of add some of this lighter pencil on top just to really tie everything together. And this should be shaded into your shadow because your shadow is only going to get darker, which is kind of what we want. You don't have to shade just around the shadow. You can shade right through it. So I'm going to go ahead and lay in my first layer. Up here, I'm going to really focus on being nice and light. Now I'm going to add a little more value down here. I want it to be about a 3. Sometimes too, you'll need your pencil to kind of flatten out. So if you take it and press really hard and get to light and just kind of practice your shading and create a nice like groove, nice flat edge for your pencil shade. When you're shading, it makes life a little bit easier. So I got a little too crazy right there. So we're going to go just nice and light, kind of build this up a little bit. I'm going to have it be a little bit darker down here in the corner. And just nice and lightly build up your layers. Make the value a little bit darker down here. Remember, just shade right into and on top of your shadow. Really take your time doing the shading, because the minute you rush things is when you start making mistakes, like me right now. That's what happened here. I'm kind of rushing this and it looks really scratchy and grainy. So I'm going to need to go and spend the time and really develop my layering and use my circular shading technique. Right, so I'm going to go back over here to darken this area up a smidge. I want this probably around a 3 or 4. I would say 4 is probably the max. I don't want to get much darker. I was thinking 3 earlier, but I think 4 is good. Getting there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the background, and then I'll touch everything up at the end. I'm going to do kind of a darker area over here around the ball into a medium gray. So I'm going to get pretty, I guess I'll get pretty dark, probably around a 6 right here. And I'm going to go in and smooth all these kind of lines out. But you see where the shading and value overlap is where it creates this darker line. It's because it's got double layered. So you need to go back in and smooth everything out with your circular kind of drawing motion. Blends it in a lot better. Move this a little bit. As I move away from the ball, I'm going to get a little bit lighter up here. And I'm just going to come right up to the edge of the ball because the ball edge is actually darker than my background right now. So that works pretty good. If I shade right up to the edge and even on top of it, it kind of blends the like hard cartoon like looking style and makes it look more 3D. It's going to ties in your whole drawing. But you can see how it starts overlapping here when I'm just doing one layer, and you can see the double, like where it's doubled layered, it gets a little bit darker. So that's why we always go back in and re-layer, okay? Trying to get a base coat laid in for us so we can keep developing that shading here. And if I were smart, I could have taped these edges off and shaded right up, and like messily like I am, right up to the edge, and the tape would hold that in, which would have been nice, but I didn't. That's okay. All right, so now I'm going to go through and kind of level all this out. We want to layer up, get rid of all these shading lines. So we're really focusing right now on a little circular blending kind of motion. Remember, you might need a piece of paper to put your hand down, just so when you're blending, you're not smudging everything you just worked so hard to do. We're getting there slowly. So still, this is really dark right here, and it doesn't fade or transition good enough, so I'm going to keep building these layers up. So this is only one layer up here. I need to put layer number 2 in. And then keep building these up a little bit so it doesn't have like a harsh dark to just mid-tone. It should transition and slowly change. Nice gradient. Honestly, if you really invest the time to sit here and pay attention to the transitions from light to dark, you actually, I mean, it's a simple drawing, but it's a cool looking drawing. Something that you can be kind of proud of and you learn a lot from. I haven't done this in, I don't know, 12 years. The last time I did one of these drawings. But you can see how I still only have one layer up here, and the second layer where they overlapped, it's really dark, so I want to slowly start blending that in. So nice and lightly, just kind of shading those circular motions and building up my layers and leveling and evening everything out. Sometimes it looks like you're not doing anything, but if you stand back and look at it, it really starts kind of coming together. We want it to be consistent, nice and smooth, the background. Not harsh and choppy and scratchy. Remember those scratchy shading lines we want to get rid of. We don't want that. So notice how there's no harsh dark outline continuously around the ball. This, if I shade this, you can kind of see my pencil line. If I shade right on top of the ball and over the top of the surface here, it kind of makes that disappear, which is good. I'm gonna do the same thing over here a little bit, really lightly. My transition here needs to change a little bit. Almost done. All right. I think that looks pretty good. There's my sphere drawing for you guys, okay?